The world was a desolate canvas, painted in shades of gray, a grim portrait of a future where humanity had succumbed to its own worst instincts. The sun, once a benevolent source of warmth and life, now hung like a malevolent eye in the perpetually overcast sky, casting an oppressive gloom upon the ravaged landscape. I was a denizen of this desolate realm, a cog in the rusting machinery of a society that had long since forgotten the meaning of freedom and joy. Our days were regimented, our lives dictated by the cold, calculating dictates of an omnipresent authority. Every thought, every action was scrutinized, monitored, and controlled. The streets were desolate, devoid of the vibrant energy that once pulsed through them. The buildings, once proud symbols of human ingenuity, now stood as decaying monuments to our downfall. The air was thick with the stench of decay, a constant reminder of the fragile nature of our existence. I worked in the factories, my hands calloused and raw from the endless toil. The work was mind-numbing, a soul-crushing repetition of tasks that served no purpose beyond the perpetuation of our oppressive system. I was a mere cog in the machine, a faceless entity devoid of individuality. Survival was a constant struggle, a daily battle against hunger, disease, and the ever-present threat of punishment. The authorities were ruthless, their thirst for power insatiable. They ruled with fear, using brutality and intimidation to maintain their iron grip on the populace. Hope was a luxury we could no longer afford. We had long since abandoned dreams of a better future, our minds numbed by the relentless grind of existence. We were prisoners in our own world, trapped in a perpetual cycle of fear and despair. One night, as I lay on my pallet in the overcrowded dormitory, a sense of rebellion stirred within me. A flicker of defiance, a spark of the human spirit that had been so ruthlessly suppressed. I longed for something more, something beyond the bleak monotony of our existence. I began to dream of a different world, a world where freedom reigned and the shackles of oppression were cast aside. A world where the sun shone brightly, not as a symbol of oppression, but as a beacon of hope and renewal. I knew that my dreams were dangerous, that the mere act of imagining a better future was an act of rebellion. But I could no longer suppress the yearning that burned within me. I had to believe in something more than the grim reality that surrounded me. I began to whisper my dreams to others, sharing my visions of a world free from fear and tyranny. My words spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of my fellow citizens. Together, we plotted our escape, our hearts filled with a newfound determination. We would not live as slaves any longer. We would rise up and reclaim our freedom. The night of our uprising arrived, and we poured into the streets, a surging tide of humanity united in a common cause. The authorities were caught off guard, their grip on power slipping away. We fought with a ferocity born of desperation, our fists and makeshift weapons no match for their superior firepower. But we were relentless, our spirits buoyed by the belief in a better future. In the end, we prevailed, our victory hard-won, but undeniable. We had cast off the shackles of oppression, reclaiming our freedom and our humanity. The world we had created was still in shambles, but we had taken the first step towards rebuilding. We had learned from our mistakes, and we were determined to create a society that was just, equitable, and free. The future was uncertain, but we were no longer afraid. We had faced our darkest fears and emerged stronger, our spirits unbroken. We were the inheritors of a new dawn, a world where hope once again dared to shine. In the dimly lit corridors of a once thriving city, shadows whispered secrets that the government desperately tried to bury. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long, foreboding shadows, Oliver Patterson trudged wearily through the desolate streets. The air was thick with tension, and the once vibrant cityscape now echoed with the haunting sounds of silence. Oliver was an ordinary citizen, just trying to survive in a world where the government's corruption had grown like a malignant tumor, infecting every aspect of society. He had once been a hopeful young man, eager to contribute to the betterment of his community. However, that hope had been snuffed out by the oppressive regime that now held the city in its iron grip. The government's propaganda machines worked tirelessly, spewing lies that masked the truth. They claimed to be guardians of the people, but in reality, they were predators preying on the weak. The city had become a breeding ground for fear, and the citizens were mere pawns in the government's sick game. One night, as Oliver navigated the deserted streets, he stumbled upon a hidden network of rebels who dared to resist the tyranny. They operated in the shadows, communicating through encrypted channels, spreading information that exposed the government's darkest secrets. Intrigued and fueled by a flicker of defiance, Oliver joined their ranks. As he delved deeper into the rebellion, Oliver uncovered the extent of the government's malevolence. They had established clandestine facilities where citizens disappeared without a trace, subjected to inhumane experiments in the name of so-called progress. The stench of corruption permeated every layer of the government, and Oliver could no longer turn a blind eye. The rebels, aware of Oliver's knowledge, hatched a daring plan to expose the truth to the world. As they prepared to infiltrate one of the government's secret facilities, a sense of dread hung in the air. The night was pregnant with uncertainty, and Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that the walls had ears and the shadows had eyes. The operation unfolded in a macabre dance of secrecy and danger. The rebels moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the government's dark heart. However, just as they unearthed evidence that could shatter the government's facade, a betrayal from within their own ranks sent shockwaves through the rebellion. As alarms blared and harsh lights flickered to life, Oliver found himself cornered by government enforcers. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized the true horror of the situation. The rebellion had been infiltrated, and their fight for justice had been extinguished before it could ignite. Captured and taken to an interrogation chamber, Oliver faced the cold, unfeeling eyes of government officials who reveled in their power. The truth, once within his grasp, slipped away like grains of sand. In the end, Oliver became just another victim of the government's insatiable hunger for control. The city, wrapped in a suffocating shroud of corruption, continued its descent into darkness. The citizens, unaware of the rebellion's brief spark, moved through their lives like marionettes, dancing to the government's malevolent tune. The shadows whispered secrets, but in a city drowned in despair, the truth remained buried, waiting for a flicker of hope to reignite the flame of resistance. The city of Neo-Sol was a grotesque spectacle of concrete and steel, a labyrinth of towering skyscrapers that cast long, oppressive shadows over the narrow, smog-choked streets. Beneath the veneer of progress and prosperity lurked a dark underbelly, a world of corruption and despair, where the government held absolute power, its iron fist crushing the hopes and dreams of its citizens. I was one of those citizens, a cog in the vast machinery of Neo-Sol, my life a monotonous cycle of work and sleep, devoid of any semblance of freedom or joy. The government, a shadowy cabal of power-hungry elites, controlled every aspect of our existence, from the information we consumed to the thoughts we dared to think. Our homes were constantly monitored, our every move tracked by an omnipresent surveillance system. Our thoughts were policed, our dissent silenced. The government's propaganda machine churned out a steady stream of lies, painting a picture of a utopia where all were happy and content, while in reality, fear and desperation gnawed at the hearts of the populace. I worked as a data analyst, my days spent sifting through mountains of meaningless information, searching for patterns that didn't exist. My work was meaningless, a pointless exercise in futility designed to keep me occupied, to prevent me from questioning the reality I was forced to live in. But deep within me, a spark of rebellion flickered, a defiant refusal to accept the shackles that bound me. I yearned for freedom, for the right to think and act for myself, to live a life not dictated by the whims of a corrupt government. One day, while analyzing a routine data dump, I stumbled upon something unexpected. A hidden file, a secret document that exposed the depths of the government's corruption. My heart pounded as I read the damning evidence, the details of illicit deals, the names of those involved, the extent of their greed and treachery. I knew I couldn't ignore this information. I had to do something, to expose the truth, to bring down the corrupt regime that had cast a shadow of despair over our city. But I also knew that I was walking a tightrope, that the government would stop at nothing to silence anyone who dared to challenge their authority. I spent the next few weeks carefully planning my next move, gathering evidence, creating a network of contacts, and preparing for the inevitable backlash. I knew the risks, the potential for capture, torture, even death. But I couldn't live with myself if I did nothing, if I allowed the government to continue its reign of terror. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. I released the stolen documents, sending shockwaves through the city. The government scrambled to contain the damage, their carefully crafted facade of legitimacy crumbling before their eyes. Protests erupted, the streets filled with the cries of an oppressed people demanding their freedom. I watched from the shadows, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. I had lit a spark, a flame of rebellion that could not be extinguished. The fight for freedom had begun, and I was determined to be a part of it, to fight for a better future for Neo Sol, a future where the people, not the government, held the power.